Brothers and sisters, welcome to my podcast. Now, who I am is not important, but what I am might actually interest you, because I'm the one who's going to break the masks which blind you and the chains that bind you. Follow my lamp former thought slaves as I guide you through my underground railroad of free thought. I'm Seraphim, and this is Escape from Sheepleville. Welcome to my first podcast, appropriately entitled Motherfucker. Now, this is going to be the weirdest series of podcasts you've ever heard. Some guy without a professional studio, with the inescapable hum of his gaming computer, and the noisy shuffle of a clueless city's life in the background. Yet, we're going to talk about some shit that's real. Amazing shit that you've never thought about before, and will change the way you look at both yourself and the world around you. So pretend that the background hum is coming from my spaceship, and I'm an interstellar brother, a celestial debugger, fallen upon this world to fix a societal network that crashed after Mother Earth downloaded a virus in her free screensaver. In order to fully comprehend the subject matter which we are going to be dealing with in these podcasts, we need to appreciate the meanings of words and in what voice they are being spoken in, and what purpose they serve. Take the word spelling, for example. It has its root origins in the word for casting spells, because that's what it seemed to be to people who were illiterate back in the days of the early pharaohs and such, when only the scribes could learn to read and write. Oh shit. The only people who were allowed, at least officially, to learn to read and write were those loyal to the established social order. Oh, and who had wealth, lots and lots of wealth. There was no such thing as a public education. Try to imagine how fucked up a world it would be if only the buck-toothed bobbleheads who champion the cause of conservative talk radio today were the only ones who could legally learn to read and write. So back then, if you were illiterate, you were basically handed some bricks, pointed in the direction of a tomb or a pyramid, and told to keep the fuck moving lest you think too much. Stupidity and superstition was encouraged by the priesthood, because it was all about social control and keeping that money in their sister fucking families. And they did fuck their sisters. Don't believe me? Google is your friend. Look it up. The royals kept their money in the family in the strangest of ways. So, let people think that writing is magic, they thought to themselves. Hence the phrase, spell this word for me. And its origins are even older than ancient Egypt. For there are ideas represented as magical paintings and symbols on the walls of caves in prehistoric times. Prehistoric cave paintings where Homo Graphiticus took his hands in a mouthful of mushroom-flavored paint and spewed it all over the east side walls. Then another human species called nappy-haired Pithecus blasted his mouthful of paint on the west side walls, and all hell broke loose. Oh no, you didn't, you knuckle-dragging, hairy-ass two-ball bitch, and it was on. Eventually, drive-by clubbings marked the end of the age of the Neanderthals. But that's a trip, how the word spelled has additional meanings, isn't it? I cannot overemphasize just how important it is to know the meanings of words and to listen carefully to what is being said to us, especially now in this information age. Because you might see a news report on the TV, completely without substance, but that flashy graphic with the big words leading up to it just blew your mind right into autopilot. They cast a spell on you, in a manner of speaking. They were the high-tech version of Homo Graphiticus spitting paint on the walls and leaving an image of his hand behind. And depending upon the prisms of your isms, you might just trust them on issues you don't understand, with words more cloudy than the letters in the bottom of a bowl of alphabet soup. But that's where this podcast comes in. To break the chains that bind you and the masks which blind you. If you don't understand a word you've never run across before, and I'm trying to help you to grasp something, what good am I to you, and what help can I possibly be unless I can break it down or use an example of something similar that you can actually relate to? I find in cases like this that it's often not the student's fault, but the teacher's. Some of the most intelligent people I've known just can't seem to break shit down. I don't know if it's an ego thing and they're writing and podcasting for their peers, or if they're just such fucking eggheads that they can't break out of the damn shell to save their chirping asses. There was a famous author called Ernest Hemingway, and he always seemed to write for the average Joe. He wrote for the streetwise person who didn't try to pawn themselves off as something that they weren't. Now, one of his critics, a man named William Faulkner, said about Hemingway, quote, "He has never been known to use a word that might send a reader to the dictionary," end of quote. And my response upon first reading this was, you gotta be fucking kidding me, really? What kind of crazy batshit is that to say? Would you ever have a casual conversation with someone in person and use language requiring them to say, hold up a sec, hold on. Let me grab my cell phone so I can bring up the web and check out dictionary.com. We'll continue our conversation, my brother, as soon as I can figure out just what the fuck you're saying. Can you spell that for me, you wordy-ass motherfucker? Yet Hemingway responded kindly. Poor Faulkner. Does he really think big emotions come from big words? He thinks I don't know the $10 words. I know them all right. But there are older and simpler and better words. And those are the ones I use, end of quote. Most of us would have just told Faulkner to fuck off, but Hemingway had class. It's a kind of class we could use more of today. Let's get this podcast started. Words are amazing things. They can be voiced, written, tapped out on keyboards and pads, spray painted on walls and subway trains, preached from pulpits, emblazoned upon billboards, shouted from the mountaintops, or shrouded in secrecy and spoken quietly in whispers. Words are not merely the tools of communication. They are the encapsulated embodiments of light and darkness forged at the beginning of time. Celestial voices spun out upon a wheel of fire nearly 14 billion years ago and eventually cast down upon this earth, then thrust into flesh and blood that those words might rise up and gaze back upon themselves in wonder. You are those words. Most of us filter words through the prisms of our isms. Those isms might be political, religious, or even philosophical. These isms color how we perceive things. They can be used to guide us or to mislead us. Wielding words carelessly can cause collateral damage accidentally, whereby the true meaning is lost in an abyss of preconceived notions, resulting in a fire whose flames are fanned by those who seek to sow the seeds of discord amongst brothers for the purposes of their own selfish gain. And sometimes, words alone contain within them by their very nature the seeds of such discord and misunderstanding, and need no help from evil men. Imagine, if you would, a culture that has never used the word motherfucker. A culture that doesn't stupidly purport that such words are wrong to use, simply because they are an abomination to their preconceived notions of what they think God is. Can you imagine God giving a madcap fuck about the language you use compared to all the other bullshit going on in this world? Unknowingly, these hypocrites have reduced the duties of God to the equivalent of that one asshole. That one asshole who complains about your spelling if you post an opinion somewhere online. You know the guy I'm talking about. He never addresses the subject matter. Ever. Just the fucking spelling. Now, years ago, I visited a church with this one girl where the pastor was obsessed with the thundering diction of the old King James English to the exclusion of every other translation of the Bible. And he said, get this, that the King James English was the language that God chose to speak to the world. Even though for hundreds and hundreds of years, the original languages still remained Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. These are the same brain-dead, inbred, nuff-said motherfuckers who want to isolate and segregate gay people so they don't reproduce. Let me repeat this shit, because I've heard this. They want to isolate gay people so that they don't reproduce. And they're fucking serious. I was not aware that gay men could reproduce. I'm embarrassed to say I did not see this shit coming. Now, my friend Lamarcus is as gay as a stack of strawberry pancakes. And I now feel compelled to inform him of my concerns. I must remind him that the next time he takes a shit, that prior to the flush, he needs to give that bowl a good second look, lest he join the ranks of those crazy girls who gave birth at their high school proms. I know that shit was pretty dark. I'm sorry. Wow. I can't believe that came out of me. Let's get back to the original subject. Imagine, if you would, an immigrant to this country who has never heard the word motherfucker. Now, I know that word is everywhere. It's like the I Love Lucy show of expletives. But you could travel to the deepest and most forbidding parts of the Amazon rainforest, where the local male inhabitants all look like brown rejects from a minimalist Beatles cover band, and they probably have at least one smartass in the tribe who speaks motherfucker. Now, back in high school, remember Genghis Khan? You've heard of Genghis Khan spreading his seed around the world, had sex with so many women, that so many people back there are all related to Genghis Khan somehow. Now look, these motherfuckers in this tribe, way in the deepest, darkest Amazon, all look like they're related to Mo Howard from the Three Stooges, complete with salad bowl haircut and sudden lack of trousers. But his culture is admirable. His culture doesn't value money above all things. In fact, his people pride themselves on getting across ideas and actually saying what they mean, meaning what they say, and values keeping their word and demonstrating personal integrity above all things. In other words, his culture has no place for the fucking Kardashians. Now, to that kind of culture, calling someone a motherfucker is a literalist statement. And if the expression is not meant literally, then by logical deduction, it would be a word designed to either insinuate or to confuse, as if that person speaking it was confabulating the verbal equivalent of a game of three-card Monte. You know, to put you off guard and set you up for something. You've seen this con game on the streets with the folding table set up and the crowd of suckers and shills all around it. Here's the Queen of Hearts. Watch her. No, better make it the Ace of Spades this round, because he's the real motherfucker. And he's going to motherfuck you out of your money because the fool that just won before you is part of the game. Now imagine that you're from that deep jungle Amazonian culture with the early Beatles haircuts, and your name is Tug Tug, and you just received a text from your new American friend you met at school today. He texted you by tapping out the words, "What up, motherfucker?" Now, in most cultures, fucking one's own mother is generally considered to be taboo. That's because even the most primitive societies, you know, the ones where people walk around in loincloths and clap stones together to communicate with a village down the hill, even these primitives have learned that familial inbreeding results in the offspring being, well, fucked up. So Tug Tug's literalist interpretation of his newfound friend's friendly greeting now has the potential for spiraling out of control and becoming everything from an offensive accusation to a caustic commentary intimating that his morals, as well as his mother's, are, well, fucked up. Now imagine that you're Tug Tug and you're kind of pissed off. This is an insult to you because you take words at face value. You were called a motherfucker. You've never heard this word before, and you want this asshole to now explain himself. Our modern equivalent of this would be a misunderstood Twitter post. Think about that. Our modern equivalent to this would be a misunderstood Twitter post. Now, clearly, if the person texting Tug Tug had instead said that to one of his friends who knows him well, or had said it to Tug Tug in a manner in which he could have heard his friendly tone and seen the harmless, jovial expression on his face, he might not have taken offense, but rather might have simply asked him to explain just what the fuck he meant by calling him a motherfucker. Now, this little example I gave you here might seem distasteful. or objectionable to some people, and that's okay. But please understand that when all is said and done, it is not the word motherfucker itself that is objectionable, but it is its improper use that is objectionable. Let me repeat this so this really sinks in. Please understand, when all is said and done, it is not the word motherfucker itself that is objectionable. It is its improper use that is objectionable. Saying it without thinking. We as a society are now more than ever actively and concertedly ignoring the meaning of words and just parroting shit. And we're allowing ourselves to be influenced by marketing words. One word sounds better than another, so we believe that person because his word sounds better than the person who's actually telling us the truth, and vice versa sometimes. But mostly the marketing experts have the money, and they're behind the big people with the big projects and the big ideas that want to influence us to either vote for them or follow them. This is important. And I'll have a podcast on this in the future. It'll blow your mind. But for now, let's keep this funny. Let me give you a ridiculous example of this. We had a wonderful time at the Mon's house. His mother made us cookies. As opposed to, it was the shit at the Mon's house. His mom laid her motherfucking cookies down, bitch. Now imagine I just walked into the conversation and I only heard the second sentence. I'm thinking to myself, really? I never realized what a sexually free spirit the Mon's mother was. And I did not know she was that attractive, laying her motherfucking cookies out there for the whole motherfucking world to see. I must make it a motherfucking point to trundle on down there someday and get some of those motherfucking cookies for my motherfucking self. Why? I'm a scandalous motherfucker, that's why. But let's get back to the point of this podcast. And that is to teach and convey ideas without people really knowing that they're being taught something. I do this by descending into the ridiculous. In my defense, I'd like to point out that it is the ridiculous and unusual things that stick in our minds. And these sorts of things have been used as memory hacks and to illustrate concepts for generations. They're part and parcel of the toolbox of the entertainment industry as well. For example, if I asked you to imagine a coyote chasing a roadrunner, what would be the first image that would come to mind? Would it be a hairy mammal chasing a bird scampering through some dry desert underbrush in the Mojave somewhere? Or would the coyote be a well-known cartoon character using an unnecessarily complicated plan and employing the latest Acme devices to do so? Now, most of you would have thought of the cartoon immediately. A cartoon which was first released in theaters on September 17th, 1949. And believe it or not, this first Coyote and Roadrunner episode was called The Fast and the Furious. The Fast and the Furious. I bet some of you are now thinking of Vin Diesel racing down the road in The Fast and the Furious. And I bet you even money that most of you couldn't tell me the last time you even saw a Coyote and a Roadrunner cartoon. And yet, that cartoon image is the first thing that came to mind for many of you. Do me a favor. Picture Vin Diesel in a car, racing against Wile E. Coyote, who's strapped himself to a red rocket, which is now airborne just above the ground. And they're both chasing after the Roadrunner and running neck and neck. The Fast and the Furious and the Fast and the Furious are both trying to get that Roadrunner, who turns his head to look behind him, says beep beep, and leaves them both in a cloud of dust. We'll get back to this, to the Fast and the Furious. But for now, let's get back to Tug Tug, who has now calmed down after a lengthy explanation from his cousins Dig Dug and Noseplug about how Americans say things that don't really mean what the words themselves seem to describe. Tug Tug is convinced now more than ever that Americans are straight up out of their motherfucking minds. And to an extent, he'd be right. I mean, how did the word motherfucker become a compliment? Maybe it's meant to describe someone else's mother that you're fucking, and there's this unspoken assumption that she's really hot looking, like Damon's mother in the previous example. Poor Damon. Did you ever notice that whenever single mothers go out to the clubs, they all try to pimp themselves out way more than the women who have never given birth to children? Maybe it has its origins in that sort of thing. You know, it's like calling someone a pimp. Unless they're actually pimping their own mother, now that would be really fucked up. Of course, then, the people paying to fuck her would be the motherfuckers, and that wouldn't be a compliment as much as it would be a mission statement of your business model. Then, being a motherfucker would just be another word for consumer, thus placing your mother into the starring role as the bag of Chips Ahoy. I'm sorry, Damon. Let's look at one more example, in which we examine the amazing versatility of this word known as motherfucker. Let's imagine that the location of your job necessitates that you must drive to the freeway entrance through an urban area renowned for its crime, its crack, and its compulsive singing disorders. You're in a flashy new car, your choice, but bear in mind that it's positively screaming the words personal accomplishment, financial success, and poor judgment. Suddenly, someone opens your driver's side door, and you find a gun, presumably stolen, pointed right at your head. The fellow pointing the gun at you seems rather agitated, and he bellows out the words, "Get out the car, motherfucker!" Rapidly responding to your instincts for self-preservation, you exit the vehicle, and he quickly drives away with it, leaving you to happily live another day. As you trundle towards the bus stop, you think about what he called you. He called you a motherfucker. What exactly did he mean by that? It certainly wasn't a compliment, but a statement more designed to cause fear and trembling. Now, what about being called a motherfucker would cause such dread? As far as you know, you haven't had sex with any single mothers, much less any married mothers, and the only literal motherfucker you know is your own father. In your overwrought state, having just been carjacked, images from your tender childhood flood your mind. You remember, at the tender age of 8 years old, opening the door to your parents' room the day your mother and father were having sex. Specifically, that day when your mother was giving your dad a blowjob. Since they were both preoccupied, neither of them noticed you standing there wall-eyed and slack-jawed in amazement and shock that the same woman who bitched you out for not eating your vegetables because you hated how they tasted was now hungrily devouring your dad's throbbing cock. As he lay there on his back, beer belly obscuring his field of vision and your mother's fallen hair obscuring her sight of you, you found yourself transfixed at this preposterous scenario. Suddenly, and without prior warning, your father groaned and smiling wickedly. Your mother pulled her head back and let him spunk into her open waiting mouth. Holding back the revulsion and still on scene, you scurried out the room. Trembling, you thought to yourself that this was beyond a doubt the most disgusting and horrifying thing which you have seen so far in your 8 years of human existence. Then it suddenly occurs to you. Your father was able to blow snot through his dick. How the fuck did he do that? You can't do that. Your dad must have some kind of mutant superpower or something. My dad is amazing, you exclaim out loud. Why, you just can't wait to tell your friends. And when you get back to school the next morning, that is exactly what you do. Your father's ability to blow snot out his penis makes him a legend at your elementary school, and your resulting popularity swells. That is, until your teacher, Miss Crabtree, overhears the conversation and calls the Department of Child Social Services. Within hours, your parents are contacted and whisked into the principal's office, along with an upset social worker and concerned Miss Crabtree, where they both berate your father for having sex with your mother and not locking the motherfucking door. That's it, you think to yourself. I'm a motherfucker because I forgot to lock the motherfucking door. Had I locked the door to my vehicle, that thug wouldn't have been able to open it so handily and jack me so easily. What an amazing and versatile word that is. I really am a silly motherfucker. Now, so far, this has been a thoroughly ridiculous podcast. And there are some people, grammar Nazis and religious zealots mostly, who will say that this descent into the profane and the irreverent has no social value. I would disagree. Because the point I'm illustrating here is that we as a society need to critically examine not only the context with which words are spoken in, but the actual meanings of the words themselves. And not just the meanings of words like motherfucker, but words that have more substantive value. Words that are spoken to us and by us every single day. Because if on the one hand we only look at the tone and not the implications of the words themselves, or conversely only look at the words without considering the context with which they are being spoken in, or in other words, the spirit of what is actually being said, if we don't consider these things, we often wind up getting fucked. And you will, if you haven't discovered this already, you will end up not only getting fucked, but pimped as well by industries and institutions who make fortunes playing people against each other over misunderstandings of things, both written and spoken. Industries and organizations which thrive upon the ignorance and innocence of those in whose trust they've gained. And in my next podcast, I'll show you how words can change the way you look at life itself. You see, all this profanity was just a ruse to teach you something. That words have meanings we don't always critically examine. And that sometimes, by descending into the ridiculous, we can truly understand the importance of context. That sometimes words alone aren't enough to make things clear to the human experience. They need to be orchestrated and painted into significance by someone who actually gives a fuck and knows how to face you in the right direction. Let me ask you a question. What was the title of the first Coyote and Roadrunner cartoon called? Really? How on earth did you remember that? Yo, this is Seraphim. I'd like to thank you for listening to my podcast. If you like what you've listened to so far, please subscribe, rate it, and maybe let your voice be heard by saying what you think about it and spreading the word. In the meantime, I'll be out here in the shadows, trying to change the world one twisted podcast and one catastrophic mindfuck at a time. I hope we meet again. Peace.